out. It's the Shen once again, taking away a powerful tool that the Unicorns have been utilizing in a lot of their wins once again.
If you are G2, you can very much just ban away the things that you did in game one because you had such a clean and effective game. Exactly. And so far, what we've seen on red side is there haven't been a huge shift because champions like LeBlanc and Rengar and Camille are still considered powerful picks even after the nerfs that they had experienced. So a lot of the European teams are yet to, from the one game that we've seen on patch 7.3, are yet to shift away from this, from what we've seen as conventional ban.
Absolutely, but there was that one difference in the last game comes in once again with Camille being a blue side ban for G2. Really heavy focus on the top side. And that's what made Xerxe, honestly, have little choice but to opt into a matchup that maybe he didn't want.
Now I wonder if they look to early lock in the Graves again.
It was just a fun little flash on the Renekton, but yes, it is going to be the Graves. So Trick did not have too much trouble past the first blood. He was really rocking and rolling, so they take the Graves really quickly. See if Xerxe takes the Kha'Zix himself. He doesn't need to take it in this rotation.
And what fascinated me so much about Trick's Graves was the way in which he used it. Because he wasn't necessarily playing gank Graves. He would just walk into lane, get a bit of damage down. It doesn't matter if he got a kill or not. He would force the laner back when there was a big minion wave, and they could gradually get chip damage down onto these turrets, which just enabled slow, gradual pressure onto the side of Unicorns, which then resulted in them losing these leads very early on.
Not being able to come back for sure. Unicorns, for their side, gonna mix things up a little bit this time around, and they lock the Tahm Kench for themselves, and there's the Ivern that we wanted to see in game number one. Xerxe going back to a favorite.
Now, the Unicorns putting much more value on picks that have worked very well for them in the past. Hylissang on his Tahm Kench last week in their series against Giants was incredible. He made so many good roams, and he set up for so many good picks that you could understand why the analyst desk were wondering why they didn't look to put so much value on him, because Hylissang has had such a big presence on this champion, and it's great to see him back on it again.
Well, it's definitely not been the only one to have a big presence on it. It's taking it away from Mithy this time around. G2, they lock themselves in the Varus, a no-brainer now, and the Rumble for Expect. We actually could have called it a flexible pick, but not so much with the Graves locked in.
Now I wonder if you're the Unicorns, perhaps you look to ban away Karma. Rises in popularity a little bit, given the nerfs to Malzahar and Xerxe, something that a couple of bot lanes in Europe have talked about. She's very powerful against champions like champions like Tahm Kench, because you have that early push. But also, if you're the Unicorns, you want to look to early pick that Ryze once again, right? So banning away these mid laners to give Exileh a little bit of an easier time, because we saw in game one how dominant PerkZ was on that arc.
Yeah, that was ridiculous, and I think that ban is very well merited, but there'll be one more for the Unicorns of Love. See if they do focus on something like the Karma this time around. Is Exileh confident enough to take on whatever else PerkZ has got? A few more seconds still ticking down.
I feel like the Karma would make sense, mainly as it's one of the stronger picks into it, but Unicorns are more interested in investing their bans towards the mid lane. They don't want to allow PerkZ to be on something dominant. But this just spells out a Ryze first pick. And if G2 ban away the Ryze, then Unicorns pick the Syndra. So it's kind of a win-win for Unicorns right now in terms of mid lane. But G2, they can just leave everything up, right? So then they have more options available to them.
Yeah, they didn't seem too fussed in game number one for sure, and dealing with Exileh's Ryze. We'll see if that's the case once again. Unicorns still have some time on the board. They could opt into the matchup itself. It could be a Ryze versus Syndra. Still looking to pick up not just that mid lane, however. They also want to get a top lane for Xerxe, but they have held it for last as the Ryze is locked in.
So a staple pick for the Unicorns of Love, something that they've had a lot of success on. Syndra is open, but G2 are going for the Azir.
You know, we heard PerkZ just kind of mentioning backstage. We thought he might have been joking a little bit. Practicing Azir, practicing Azir. Not apparently a joke. So it's locked in, and they take the Braum as a support champion.
A little bit surprised about the Braum into Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench has been well known for being a good pick into melee supports, given as to how effective he can make it, like making them useless, because Braum throws up the shield, well, now I'm just going to gobble you up and throw you away. But he does provide good disengage and act as a good front line, which G2 are somewhat lacking. Now, the fact that they've actually picked up the Azir, we did see it come out from Febiven last week. against G2, in fact, and it got heavily punished by the Orianna. But now that it's going into the Ryze, we can talk a little bit more about it, but it is a very farm-centric lane where the Azir can't really look to make a lot of aggressive plays, but the big shift now is G2 are playing once again towards that mid-game spike. They don't necessarily have early aggressors, but they do have a phenomenal team fighting composition.
Well, for the Unicorns, I don't think it's too shabby for them either. Still some scaling picks, but Gnar could give the Rumble a hard time. And I want to see what Samux and Hylissang can get done this time around. It is two tanky supports facing off against one another with long-range poke from the AD carries, but that doesn't change much.
Finally, we move away from all the range supports. Pyro, when was the last time you saw two tanks in the bottom lane, eh?
Oof. I think it might have been a bit of time. We saw, well, one versus a ranged one last time around, but that actually went the tank's way, so hey.
We'll have a little bit more back and forth in the bottom lane. The top lane's pretty exciting because we have the return of Gnar. Unicorns drafting themselves a bit more of a 1-3-1 comp this time around. Gonna look to try and divide the G2 eSports lineup, but this very depends on the laners having success again. If you want to have a good 1-3-1 composition where you divide G2 eSports, then you need to be able, or you need to be confident in your Ryze to be able to 1v1 out on his side lane and the Gnar to be able to 1v1 out on his.
And you're still gonna have to watch for what Trick does, because he definitely makes that Graves level up a little faster than a lot of people do. We'll see what happens. G2 looking to knock out the Unicorns and claim sole possession of first place here in the European LCS. If you think that's going to happen, hop on Twitter. Go hit that hashtag G2win at LOL eSports. But the Unicorns of Love are looking to fight back. Just like that guy, you can go ahead and tweet hashtag UOL win. We're out the gates for game 2. Let's see where they go. We're going to get another line of scrimmage, or will we have some shenanigans? G2 have been known to mess around a little bit when they're on the up and up. Not so much lately.
I think they want to get a bit of deep vision down to see where Xerxe starts, because something that we saw last week from Xerxe was in the matchup against Memento, when Memento was playing the Graves, something that Trick can do on Graves is because of how quick his clear is. You can actually start blue, run over to the red, steal it away, and you can stop Xerxe getting things like 3 buffs on you, right? And you can also deny the Ivern an early jungle. But that's important for you to be able to see where the Ivern starts. And because he doesn't get a leash, you often don't know, so it looked initially like G2 wanted to group up to then aggressively move in and get that vision down, but they've decided to just move away from that plan.
But they did ping him out. Spotted for just a moment as he stepped forward into River, or close enough to River. So now G2 have some information to work with, and they'll know that they can start easily on the bottom side and then rotate up towards the top without fear of losing out too many buffs.
So it looks like Trick actually starting on the bottom side of the map. G2 will likely give away this position depending on how late it takes them to get into lane. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, Azir versus Ryze, very farm-centric. It's difficult for the Ryze to trade back against the Azir, especially around the level 4 mark, once PerkZ gets about 2 points into his queue. The range is just so much greater for the Azir than it is for the Ryze. And while he has good wave clear, he has to get fairly close to the minion wave, so it enables Azir to get a bit of harass down. So early levels is pretty difficult for the Ryze, but he can farm, he can just play it passively, so it's not a terribly exciting matchup. Meanwhile, in the bottom, because Unicorns of Love have already gotten an early push on, they will get the early level 2, and they will be the aggressors initially. But as a Braum, it's not until level 6 that you really have that all-in potential. So likely that while we may see a couple back and forth trades, the most exciting thing will likely be here up in the top lane.
Yeah, and I think that's what we expected from last game as well. Chachi saying, all right, well, you want to try to bully me, I'm going to bully you in the next game. Just try to dodge out from the Flame Spitter of his Spect. And meanwhile, Exileh taking a little bit of damage, but he's able to dish it back onto Perk. So maybe this won't be the quiet affair that we thought if Exileh decides to go all in. It was something he was known for starting out in the European LCS, but that was also on things like Yasuo.
The fault of PerkZ there was actually that he moved away from the minion wave. If he'd stayed a little bit closer, then he would have been able to use the minion wave as a blocker for the skill shots. And now, notice that Exileh using his level 3 spikes as well as his shield to move up aggressively and know that he can win out on the trade against the Azir. Just good understanding of his champion and spikes. And cooldown windows that he can then pressure out against the Azir.
Yeah, not too bad of a start for him right now. Exileh had a little bit of a rough time previous game. He does take some damage from Sand Soldier. Check in back on the bottom side. Samux trying to harass Mithy, but he's tanky enough to hang on to it for now. Expect more members to be moving towards this bottom side earlier this game, with an Infernal Dragon being our first. a little bit more valuable to fight over. But Trick's heading up top.
There is a ward in the tri-bush, but the wave is pushing towards Expect. Expect had already set up an early push, which means the Chachi, yes, he does get the early level 4, but he's also going to run first into the Trick.
Oh, and he's just going to have to hop, skip, and flash his way out of danger. Meanwhile, back on mid, Exileh is a little low on mana. He turns around, he's got the Ghost, but PerkZ is right there with the damage. Xerxe coming in, and the Root Caller is going to get flashed away. Exileh tanking one shot. All that build-up.
This time, Xerxe is there to support his mid lane as he goes aggressive. PerkZ thought that he could actually get the 1v1 kill once again. I think about halfway through the fight, he's like, this is suspicious. Why isn't he backing away? And it was a little bit too late before he realized, the enemy jungler is here. So he ends up losing both his summoners. Could be a bit of a risk later on against Xerxe. When you combine the amount of CC that both Ryze and Xerxe have, it's a very dangerous toss. Mithy goes in!
Yeah, Mithy goes in right at the worst possible moment. He's gonna flash in place, or flash forward, I should say, but he's tanky enough to make it out. He played ring around the wall, and Xerxe looks scary, but once again can't get the kill off.
Definitely a whoopsie from Mithy. I feel like that he went in just as Xerxe showed his face, but that's very also unlike Mithy to be that aggressive in lane when you have knowledge that the jungler was just mid recently. Fortunately, he only loses his flash, but this is an opportunity now for Unicorns to punish. They've taken summoner spells in the mid lane, they've taken summoner spells in the bottom, and now we're seeing more of what we're used to from Xerxe, exerting more early pressure on the map to set up his laners for success.
See if that continues for him. For the time being, Trick still trying to get up to speed. No flashy jungle kill plays, but Xerxe definitely on a much more supportive champion this time around, one that he has been really credited with kind of innovating here in Europe, making it a very popular choice. Much more quiet affair down bottom despite the action, though, that went on. It has been a very even farm fest, as predicted. Last time around, Samux and Hylissang just really weren't up to speed as Chachi and Danger are getting barbecued. Has to walk away, and he's getting pushed back, but at least he's keeping up on farm himself.
Expect doing a really good job up in this top lane. I feel like the Expect has actually done a lot of work in this series so far. His Renekton in game 1 was very impressive.
He had a lot of help from Trick, but you're right.
He did, which was good awareness from G2 to play around the lane that was pushing. We've already seen Trick invest a lot of time topside to try and support Expect a little bit more. And I think this is more of what G2 should be doing, because in the past, I think that as a team, they played a lot more towards their bot and mid, especially mid, as PerkZ goes in.
Oh, he tried for the shuffle, but instead, Exileh sidesteps away. Trick is coming in through the side, throws down the smoke screen, and Exileh is able to walk away.
Good flash from Exileh. This time, he respects the all-in from PerkZ, and if he had not been able to dodge it, then there would have been more than enough damage from both Trick and PerkZ to get that kill down onto Exileh. But now he's the one with no flash, and PerkZ is looking to continue his aggression.
Yeah, you gotta be careful there, buddy. A little low on mana, very low on health. PerkZ is not lacking for either right now, and he's playing a dangerous game, just trying to get the farm back for himself, keeping it up. But PerkZ, as you said, can harass him, push him back time and time again. Now, up on the top side, Chachi is realizing he might be able to push Expect back as he was overheating for just a second. But he's right back in the action. Early boots means he's going to be able to move fast on that to try and make plays onto Chachi. Still no kills, 7 minutes into this game.
For context on the very early Sorcerer shoes, is actually a good answer to Null Magic Mantle because of the flat penetration that you get very early on. It enables you to be more aggressive in the lane. And we can see that that's Expect's goal. Likely that he'll work towards the Haunting Guys to just stack onto that penetration, which means that he can just continue to be the aggressor during the laning phase.
It's not the only one. Getting those boots early on the other side of the map. Exileh. He has his Swifties. Still trying to stack that tier, but at least he'll be able to close the distance to PerkZ a little bit quicker. PerkZ still doesn't have his summoners up and available, but that heal will be there soon. So if Xerxe wants to make a move, he better act fast.
Now look at Trick in the bottom lane. He's already moved in through the lane ward, but UOL have actually somewhat predicted this, and they've got a lot of deep vision down in the bottom lane. So they're able to read the map movements from Trick, and they don't end up getting punished for it. But now because G2 have the push down bottom, they can look to get a bit of deep vision down in Unicorn's bottom half of the jungle.
So they go roving around, only finding the spot to throw the ward in. Should be running into the Unicorn's ward as well. Just taking a look at how things are. It is a very, very even game since no major moves have happened just yet. Mithy will spot Hylissang out. Sends a tongue lashing. There's the chains on. Samux is having to be careful here. Flashing away, Samux stopped up for just a second, and Hylissang noms him. Putting it back to the safety of tower, but it is not over yet. Expect around the backside with an equalizer. It looked like he teleported on that ward, and Samux is going down for first blood. Trick is there to try and get two. Doesn't manage to find it until the last second. Exileh looking for revenge. In comes Xerxe. It is a party in this bot lane, but the Unicorns may not have the numbers. Exileh does get a kill, but not before he goes down. Daisy looking to try and even the odds. But it's too late. Expect a Mithy. They should be able to walk away from this one.
3 for 1 in favor of G2. Remember that ward that Trick had already placed in the enemy jungle earlier on after the push that G2 had gone enabled Expect to go for this TP play down bot and get G2 all of these early kills.
Chachi couldn't match it, so instead he was stuck up in the top lane, pecking away at this tower. He won't even secure it right now. But 3 kills to 1 is something that G2 can be happy taking. Xerxe looking to push them back for now, but there's no backup except the Tahm Kench comes out of the woodwork, and they find Expect on the backside. Samux getting a little revenge.
Good response from the Unicorns, utilizing the ultimate from Hylissang to punish the fact that G2 had not cleared out the wave fast enough, and they stuck around a little bit too long. This means that it's actually Unicorns that come out on top, because not only do they get themselves 2 kills overall from that play, but they also get themselves the first Blood Tower gold.
They can be pretty happy about that, and with the important Infernal Drake right in their backyard, they can go ahead and take this one down without a whole lot of recourse from G2 eSports. Trick was a little bit busy up towards the top side, so Unicorns a much better start this game than we saw last.
Initially, we have to criticize the Unicorns for being in a bad position, right? So Samux is the one you have to watch because you can see the Chain of Corruption coming, and rather than move away, he stays in range to get rooted up. That forces his flash, forces the consume very early on from Hylissang, and then the ward behind the tower from G2 that they had set up earlier on makes this a very easy and clean dive. The response from Exileh, yes, gets them a kill, but it doesn't really mean very much in the grand scheme of things. So at this point, G2 are just happy with what they're getting. They're able to get a lot of early kills, and it can start the pressure, start the snowball down in the bottom lane. But they stick around just a little bit too long. G2 want to push the wave underneath the turret so they can go back. They realize that they've already lost the top tower. They don't actually transition that into any objectives. So UOL use the ultimate from Hylissang to come down, punish the overextension from G2. They get a tier 1 in the top, they get a dragon, and in terms of the objective game, it is UOL the ones that come out on top.
As they're happier about how that's gone so far, they have a little bit more sustain for themselves. The redemption finished up by Xerxe. He's had more success on this Ivern, and we saw him on the Kha'Zix last time around. Trick still on this Graves. Has not picked up his boots just yet, but he does have Warrior Enchant completed. Everybody's waiting for those item power spikes. There are some Youmuu's Ghost Blades completed for the AD carries, but apart from that, still mostly looking at components.
And as we move back to the mid lane, we have to bear in mind that in Game 1, Exileh did not seem to have the best performance. His Ryze, not really very characteristic of what we were used to, especially the fact that PerkZ was able to solo kill him. This time he has shown a lot more respect, but he's also playing more from what we're used to from Exileh, looking for map movements and looking for opportunities to try and turn things around in the Unicorn's favor. And this is something that Exileh has received a lot of praise for in the past.
Starting to get himself up to speed for sure. Maybe it just was the jitters early on. We'll see. As PerkZ finds a wild Vizicsacsi in his lane, immediately backing out of that one. But once again, these mid laners, honestly, really impressive from Exileh this split so far. PerkZ, I feel like this is much more expected.
Yeah, I mean, like, as a laner, he used to be well known as an aggressive mid laner. He has been restraining himself. Remember early on in the split, he talked a lot about how he was focusing more on his mentality rather than his gameplay. And now we've seen that he's definitely gotten his gameplay up to scratch if you're able to just straight up kill your opponent 1 versus 1 with an Orianna.
Yeah, and that's why you saw such a big divide between those two in game number 1. This is a different story, for sure. The Azir, a little bit more of a surprise out of PerkZ. At least this split. In past, I think you could have said that would have been much more likely of the case. Xerxe, he's awaiting though. See if they can bait Zven and Mithy into a fight. Not this time.
But for G2, remember that this is still very much their style, right? They have a good scaling composition that transitions well into mid to late game team fights. 20 minutes in is really where their composition starts to turn on. And for the Unicorns of Love, we talked a lot about how their mid laner and top laner needs to get ahead because they're looking to play 1-3-1. They're looking to split up G2 all across the map and use their individual solo laners to just straight up out-gear and out-damage the solo laners of G2.
All right, now, despite the fact that G2 have been making the big plays, Unicorns are the ones that are ahead. That doesn't mean G2 aren't trying to make the big plays around the map. There's not a lot of objectives to get outside of towers, but let's see if they fight for fighting's sake as PerkZ gets caught up by Rune Prison and has to move his way away. Meaning Exileh gets free time on this tower in mid, and with a Gnar Vizicsacsi incoming, might think twice about going too far. No, he's actually just going to back off. Samux might be caught. Gets nailed by the Winter's Bite, but Xerxe is there to defend him. Unicorns are really looking to push deep and get some vision.
They're setting up a lot around this dragon. They want to make sure they can get the Scuttle Crab early on. Hylissang looking for roams, very much what he has been known for on this Tahm Kench in the past. Last week, his Tahm Kench performance was phenomenal, the way in which he punished the lack of flash. So far, we haven't actually seen much more from Xerxe, other than the plays that happened down bottom. He was aggressive early on in mid lane. He looked to make a play down bot, and he hasn't really revisited these lanes. He's completely ignored Xerxe, who, to be fair, now at this point is doing much better, especially after getting that first tower. But this is also fine for Xerxe, right? Because he is playing the Ivern, he is scaling nicely. Having completed the redemption is really going to add a lot to his team fighting power.
Yeah, and you see him in a much more comfortable position, not just in where he's at in the game, but just on this champion overall. On the Kha'Zix, it was kind of a different story for him. And it was something that we weren't used to seeing from the Unicorns at all. G2 did seem to fluster these guys to start things off, but I mean, good for them. It's a best-of-3 series. We'll see how they answer back. Not the most comfortable of leads. It is very, very slim, only 500 gold. G2, meanwhile, on the bottom side, looking to get vision around this dragon. What do Unicorns do from here, though? What are they looking to push?
Well, they know that they're going to lose this bottom tower, but they've already taken advantage up from the top. I feel that with the tower gone, and with Dragon spawning soon, you move Ryze down into the bottom lane, you have Samux and Hylissang move over to the mid, and then they just continue their farm. But as long as you keep Ryze on a solo lane, where he's getting solo XP and solo gold, that's the most important thing for the Ryze, because he's working towards his major items. Maybe caught? Nah, he's good. He's fine.
He's got a Realm Warp, and he's going to use it. So
but
yeah, you want to steal the blue.
You want to move him to a side lane. I think this is a mistake having Samux in a side lane because he's at the most risk of getting collapsed on. If G2 ever get an opportunity to get a bit of deep vision, he's the easiest one to actually punish. So I'd just like to see a little bit of a shift now from the Unicorns. But if you're G2, you try and force a fight. Because now you're in the mid game, you have a team fight composition, you have the Rumble just waiting to join the fray and get that red carpet down.
There they go. Hylissang arrives just in time to spot the dragon being taken. PerkZ is going to walk away. Unicorns can't really do much about that, but they're looking to try and make a cutoff here. Exileh moving forward. He finds PerkZ. He puts him in prison for just a second. But PerkZ is given as good as he gets. Exileh taken real low.
I think it's fine for Unicorns to give away the dragon. I would just like to see them start now setting up for this 1-3-1, because they do have a good split push comp. Like, they can team fight, assuming they play around Gnar effectively. But the fact that they're not moving... Oh, okay, Exileh's going to back. He's going to pick up some items, and then he's likely going to move off to a side lane. So I like this a little bit more. You can also put him top against the Rumble, and you can move Gnar down to a bottom lane, because now the threat of Dragon is gone, and Baron is a slightly bigger risk. So you kind of want to keep your Ryze towards the half of the map with which the objective that you are going to play for is near.
Smart move, smart plays, and it's a big part of why G2 are one of the top teams here in Europe and have been for a long, long time. But Unicorns of Love are trying to challenge that right now. It's going to be difficult for them, even though they have the map, they have the control, but it is not firm. And actually, the gold lead's gone in favor of G2. I mean, it has been really, really bang on even for most of this one.
It has, and it's a much better start for the Unicorns. They haven't quite conceded all the early objectives that they did in Game 1. And this is more with which Unicorns wanted. Remember that when we saw that graph at the very start of the day, it's about the 21 minutes where they get that massive spike in gold. So it's coming, ladies and gentlemen. Unicorns, they're going to kick off soon.
Those are the trends for sure. G2 definitely played their first game a lot more like what we're used to seeing for them with that slow ramp up. They kept building. They're going to hope to do it again. But it would be just so monumental for the Unicorns to get this victory here. They have to start by taking game 1, though, and how big would that be for them to get this entire series against the reigning kings of Europe?
I think it would be massive because Unicorns as an organization, they pride themselves on taking players and nurturing them. And G2 have done a similar vein where they've actually kept the same roster that they've had from last year. And for UOL, what is effectively to have a brand new roster to come together and then be a challenge for G2, considering how dominant they were last split, I think would just be a big motivational thing, not only for the team, but also for the fans of Europe, because when we think about sending all these teams to international competition, a lot of expectations are always put on G2 and then they kind of net on every other team. If we have 2 teams playing on a similar level, then next week's IEM just gets even more exciting.
Yes, indeed. But I do think a lot of it has a lot to do with these mid laners individually. PerkZ has been pretty adamant about not being necessarily the biggest carry, but he says he's worked on those mechanics, those laning mechanics for himself. He's got to stay safe first, though. I think he really has been stepping up, though, based on game 1. And just in general, even what he's done on this Azir, it's creative, it's different. I really like that coming out of the mid laner. And Hylissang and Xerxe are going to start a fight with Mithy and Trick. Zven around the side. Redemption's flying. Teleport's going. It's getting crazy. And Mithy's going to have to go back under tower. Exileh around the backside. Picks off Zven. Curtain calls on to Mithy. They're going to take him down as a double to Exileh. Looking for more. The Unicorns were the ones that got the collapse off, and Trick is fighting it out, but Xerxe takes him down.
We told you it was about this point in the game where the Unicorns switch their on button on, and they finally force a fight, and they're looking straight for Baron.
20 minutes, it's just spawned right now. The Unicorns are going all in on this one. There's a teleport coming out of Expect. Daisy is tanking this Baron up. They're trying to collapse. The equalizer's on. In goes Xerxe. He gets shuffled right on back, but this Baron's real low. It's gonna get secured. Smarted down. Expects in the pit. He gives his life. Oh my goodness, Unicorns of Love have come up with it.
And this is where their spike comes from, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Unicorns of Love forcing the fight with the Tahm Kench ultimate. They push in mid, they know they have bot pushing, they punish the AD carry being left on the top lane with no turret left to defend himself. He doesn't have the support from Braum because he's stuck in the river, and UOL can easily get this collapse down. Such a great force from the Unicorns, and they can very easily transition this into a Baron where G2 cannot respond.
This is the team fighting that when we talk about the Unicorns of Love, it looks just like that, and instantly turning for the Baron. What great macro shot calling at the end of it all. So 21 minutes, Unicorns, they've blown this game wide open. It's a 3,000 gold advantage, a very early Baron, but G2 are stacking members in the mid to try and push them back.
And this is perfect for their composition, because now, how are you going to deal with both a Ryze and a Gnar who are Baron empowered and significantly stronger? That's a 3-1-2 Ryze, a 1-0-2 Gnar. Xerxe has already demonstrated how easy it is for him to push in Expect, and this all stems from that bot lane play that G2 tried to force. Because Expect lost pressure in the top lane, Ryze got himself a couple of kills. He then had a little bit more freedom around the map. And while G2 may have a very good teamfight composition, if UOL are the ones forcing these small skirmishes and splitting G2 apart, they're never going to get an opportunity to take advantage of it.
No, and there's a pretty beefy front line for Unicorns to really rely on right now. We saw Xerxe and Hylissang really utilizing their champions to their fullest to just make sure that G2 couldn't even find a quick pickoff to turn the fights in their favor. This is looking much more like a Unicorns game than it did in game number 1. We'll see if they're able to polish off this turret. They've already got one on the top, they've got one down bottom, and with Daisy's help, they're gonna make short work of it.
Unicorns. 5,000 gold now in the lead at 22 minutes.
You called it about 2 minutes before it happened.
You couldn't ask for a better graph, could you?
No, it's, I think, pretty indicative of how these guys play all the time. There's an Ocean Drake live on the map. Unicorns can take this one, but it's just dessert to the dinner they've already taken.
The thing about Unicorns that's always impressed us as analysts is that they have consistently closed out the game very quickly. What we also saw in that graph earlier on was the fact that on average, they end their game in about 33.5 minutes, right? So once they've got a lead, they know exactly what to do with it. And the question is, can they do that against a team like G2? Because if they can, that speaks monuments for the growth that UOL have in terms of being able to shut down what is effectively the top team, or one of the top teams here in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge for them. They're clearly in their comfort zone. They're you know, in the zone overall, but can they do this to the reigning champs, back-to-back reigning champs of Europe? That's the big challenge. Unicorns have never, honestly, they've never had this big of expectations on them. And I think they're really delivering right now.
They certainly are. Definitely a step up from their Game 1 performance, to say the least.
Sal taking some chunk damage, but they're trying to get the vision in, and they are cowing G2 Esports for now. They've had Dragons, they've had Barons, and so they have the lanes.
Now what I'd like to see from the Unicorns of Love, their Baron is going to wear off in about 8 seconds. So yes, they were able to get a couple of the outer turrets, but they haven't actually pushed it much further. They need to gain control over the bottom half of G2 jungle, this red quadrant. They need to push in mid, use both Hylissang and Samux to gain, get some control walls down, get some deep vision, have then Exileh just keep pushing in the bottom lane. You know you have teleport on Xerxe up top, and you then just play around your strong side, which will be Exileh, because he doesn't have the teleport, it's harder for him to join the fray. So you want to make it so that if any plays are going to happen, they are on the bottom half of the map. But Unicorns are just kind of easing up on that pressure. Look, Exileh's pushing in when Hylissang is going back. Samux is going up to get his red buff. Likely Hylissang's just going to go back and get some wards. But right now, excuse me, Unicorns just not quite fully coordinated in how to then go for the next objective.
It seems like when they fight, they then know exactly what they need to do for the next 2 minutes or 3 minutes. But then they're like, wait, what do we do?
Until we can find another fight again, guys.
Yeah, so we're just going to go for that one. G2, on the other hand, they definitely seem more comfortable even when not fighting, but they're going to have to climb back into this one because they find themselves down almost 4,000 gold right now. There's lots of worth fighting over, though, the longer the game goes on. We're only 25 minutes in. And G2 have not lost too many games this split so far. There's a good reason for that. Clearing out everything they can throughout the jungle, even popping the blast cone, so no Unicorn shenanigans can come in. Exileh looked like he was in danger of a collapse right there, but he's got the rest of the Unicorns at his call, and we'll see if they do shove through this mid. Exileh a little bit low. PerkZ is going to try to go in, but an instant flash. Had to spend that one to get away from PerkZ. Looks like they were buying time for the mid, though.
But this is the uncoordination that we were briefly talking about, because we might not have time for that as a play comes top.
Everybody's on the top side. Expect finds himself in unfriendly territory. Daisy tanking everything through. Not enough minions to finish off that turret, and Samux gets blown away by Trick just up the river.
Unicorns of Love are suddenly all over the shop. Exileh has been forced back, and G2 are looking for a potential collapse.
They might be able to do it here. No ultimate for Trick, but it's no problem at all as they've slowed down Hylissang. Xerxe's going to get a big Gnar into the wall, but he may not go very far after that one. Looked like he was getting narbecued for just a second. Hylissang eats him up, but he's back to mini form. There is no tower, and PerkZ shuffling around the side. They turn their attention to Vizicsacsi, but PerkZ goes down. Xerxe walks away, but not till a piercing arrow takes him down to Fountain. It is 2 for 1. G2 come up ahead, but just barely.
G2 are able to bring together a scrappy team fight, but they do force the Unicorns of Love back. And I just have to wonder what the Unicorns were doing, because Samux is the one walking towards the top lane to try and force the play. Trick is able to punish him in rotation, and now...
Speaking of, all right, Zven's just trying to play ring around the river, or ring around the brush, I should say. Hylissang's going to eat him up. Kill secured by Xerxe.
Okay, this game is descending. This game is getting a little bit out of control now, because now we have to look at Zven and wonder, what was he doing there? Not respecting the...
I don't even know anymore.
I don't even know anymore. We were praising G2 in Game 1 for their clean execution. Game 2, Unicorns of Love start off responding to the aggression from G2 incredibly well. They then force a play up in the top side, and they then start gaining control over the map with a 20-minute Baron.
And then that happened.
Yeah. And now you've got people dying left, right, and center. And admittedly, this is what the fans want. Sure, we want fights, we want action, we want everywhere. But from 2 of the top teams in Europe, this is not how I'd expect them to be trying to close out this game.
Yeah, it's so strange. It's like you see like 2 very like powerful, graceful warriors going at it, and then they just drop their swords and start like slapping each other.
It's almost like they have the horn of the unicorn and the sword of the samurai, and then the unicorn starts using his foot, and so does the samurai. So they just start kicking each other and hope for the best.
You come up with the best imagery. I'm not sure how you do that, Betty, but let's hope this game gets a little bit back to the cleaner play that we were expecting. Unicorns are deciding to send 4 mid at the moment, and they do have Xerxe on the bottom side, but Baron is live once again. There's an Infernal coming up in a minute. G2 are actually going to start this Baron here. Expect's not far behind. Xerxe has TP, but Baron's already at half health.
Here comes the round warp.
Oh, they're bringing everybody to the party. It was just a zone, but they weren't going to be Anyway, fooled by it, and now they take the Baron. Exileh getting locked up. He's got shields for days. Xerxe is around the side, but he's got no Gnar bar. They're looking for Expect, see if they can polish him off. Even though the Baron buff was there, Expect goes golden, and he might be going down. Doesn't take anybody with him, and Samux getting the kill credit for that. PerkZ a little low. Daisy getting pulled into Trick. The rest of the team right on top of him. PerkZ equalizes Exileh, and Trick is left all by his own. It's a 2-for-1, but G2 have Baron on 3.
G2 just go for the force onto Baron. I'm not sure if they wanted to actually force a fight or the Baron was their objective, but either way, they're able to get what they want, and they end up getting away with it.
I love the mind games back and forth. Let's see this again, because it looked like Unicorns were all coming. Oh wait, they're not.
G2 don't even hesitate. They just commit to the Baron. They know that Xerxe isn't close enough to steal it away. At this point, they either want to try and get a fight, but they can't quite line up their ultimates to get the collapse down. They realize, okay, Expect is dead, let's just disengage this back away. You can see they try to use the Azir ultimate, but this is a slight mistake from G2. They split up, leaving Trick on the side, and there's no way that they can really save him. Good job from G2 to be able to get a kill onto Expect, but the fact that they're able to get 3 Barons out of this is still an advantage gain for the side of G2. And then...
there was a part 2 to this.
Oh, Samux. That could have been fine for the Unicorns. You took 2 Barons down, you get a couple kills, you can reset the wave, and then you end up giving a kill.
And now you have this. So it's definitely gone a little wonky, but the gold game is very even right now. G2 can be happy. As it's 30 minutes in, there's an Infernal Dragon just ripe for the taking, and they can march through this mid to try and push on. Xerxe looking to make a counterplay. Exileh, Hylissang, Xerxe, Samux, they're all here. But G2 are playing this one a little wiser, or are they? Curtain calls opened up. Xerxe is mini Gnar, but he's got shields once again. It's going to be PerkZ that gets blown up by Samux. Meanwhile, in the back, Expect throws down the equalizer. The red carpet is not enough to burn through anybody. So G2 lose 1 as they got some damage on this turret, but it could have been a lot worse. Mithy was looking real low.
All right, Samux, you redeemed yourself a little bit. Let's see if you can get anything else.
They've got Xerxe. Oh, they just bring everybody through, and they're going to stop up Zven for just a second. Mithy will give his life. Xerxe takes the kill credit. That's going to be a big dragon now for Unicorns of Love. Trick comes right on in, and he steals it right back away. Big plays for G2 to keep themselves from losing out on too much.
I'm pretty sure while that whole fight was going on, Trick was just doing the dragon. He was just standing there like, yeah, don't mind me, I'm just gonna take this objective. But the fact that G2 lose 3 members because they tried to overextend in the mid lane, they tried to force that tower down, and Samux says no. He fires out his shots, and he's able to not only get a kill, but dissuade G2. And now there's only 1 Baron buff left on the side of G2. This game is descending into madness. Look at all the low health members just getting revitalized by the redemption. Azir has already lost his life. G2 think that they can get the dragon on the back end, but Exileh, playing very aggressively, is able to get the collapse down.
You're right, Trick was just taking this. Yeah, I thought Unicorns had turned for it. I was wrong.
Trick just finishes it off by himself, being like, yeah, okay, this is fine. And he realizes he's dead, so he just wants to try and get a return.
That's when you type #worth in all chat. So, Spoils of War right now. We have Match for Dragons. We're very close on goal with Unicorns leading it by about 2,000, but at 30 minutes into this game, it's not quite as much as the Unicorns would like to. We normally see them close out pretty cleanly, but it's not the case this time around. G2 have gotten right back into this game.
The thing is, I feel like now G2 are being baited into UOL style. And this is something that we've wanted to talk a lot about throughout this entire series. Which style will come out on top, the slow, calm, calculated, or the let's fight when we can, right? And what we saw in Game 1 was G2 doing a great job of playing that calm, calculated style, and now in Game 2, UOL did a great job of forcing those initial fights, and now G2 are trying to do the same. They're grouping up, they're trying to force fights. Yes, they have a good team composition, but they're not always, they have a good team fighting composition, but they're not always properly setting up for the way in which they want to fight, and UOL are doing a good job of punishing them.
Well, we know that Unicorns are capable of playing the reactive game. Let's see if they can make this play. Xerxe is around for a flank. G2 sniffing. Something is up right here. And Xerxe is going to go mega. He hops over the wall of soldiers, so it is the cooldown on the passive there for a big ultimate out of PerkZ, and there will not be a kill just now. Unicorns were not able to make the collapse happen in time as G2 had turned off and away, but now they're going to be forced to defend their mid.
G2 also failing to get themselves the tier 2 in the mid lane. A bit of a loss for them, but they do still want to treat keep trying to group. The problem that they're having is that the way in which they set up vision control isn't enabling them to get optimal fights, right? Because if you're G2, what you want is a closed space where you can get a Rumble ultimate plus an Azir ultimate. Now, that's not team fighting, that's just Samux being called out again. Have to wonder what Samux has been doing this game, because this is not the first time he's been called out of position. But G2, if they just keep grouping up, and they are the facilitators of these engagements, and they actually coordinate their crowd control, that is how they steamroll over the Unicorns. If they keep throwing out one ultimate after another, and UOL are free to get these flanks and these collapses, Exileh can use his Realm Warp to teleport behind and cut up and split up G2, then that is what's going to allow the Unicorns to be the ones to come out ahead.
Well, we asked the question what style was going to reign supreme, and it's been like one game one way, one game the other. But the other question then becomes for G2, can they win with this style? Can they play the Unicorns game and still come out on top? Because nobody really has been able to do that. But Unicorns really were shut down by just not being allowed into this last time around. And this game, it is very different. It is interesting to see such stark differences between game 1 and 2.
But it's fun. Because game 1 we had clean, calculated. Game 2 we have a lot more violence. Unicorns of Love with 13 kills. But bear in mind, on average, is around this point in the game where the Unicorns will be looking to close things out. And when we look back to the Baron that they got at 22 minutes, that was the expectation that, at the very least, I had from the Unicorns. But then they mucked up on their map movements, they made a few bad decisions, and G2 have come back fighting. So now it's pretty much all or nothing for either team.
And that just makes it quite interesting for sure. G2 looking to close this one out with a 2-0. That'd be a big statement for this team that many thought the Unicorns could challenge for perhaps the first time in a long time here in Europe. Coaches, managers looking on bated breath. This one big mistake could blow this game wide open in either direction. At 35 minutes, getting into that late game, the Baron is going to be live once again. And would you know it, everybody wants to go to that party.
Oh. I thought I saw a flash there. My apologies. So you can see Xerxe still pressuring down the bottom lane, level 18. I expect he's really struggling to deal with him, but you can't send PerkZ because he is a mid lane mage that doesn't rotate very well.
Hold on a second. Oh, just a second. Exile's going to get nommed up. Wait, hold your horses, says Hylissang. They throw down the brush. See if they can get another catch off, but Mithy's the one in front right now. He's got the health bars for it. Expectus backing away. Both tops with their teleports available. Baron is not the only objective. About to hit the rift. There's also an Elder Drake as Hylissang flashes forward, trying to get that tongue lash off into PerkZ. They're on Baron right now. They've started it. G2. It's already down to half health. They've got the damage, but Xerxe is going to throw in the brush. Will they be able to take it? Curtain calls open. They find one shot into Trick, one onto Mithy. In comes Daisy. It's down to 1,500. Is it going to get stolen away? Xerxe plays the hero, and he grabs it right from under G2's nose. And Exileh around the side gets PerkZ. This is going great for Unicorns right now. They're getting knocked up, but Hylissang is going to get a nom onto Samux. Mithy and Zven, a double kill. They're looking for everything. They nearly get the ace and a triple for the Ryze. What the hell was that?
Xerxe, that was a great steal, but G2, what are you doing? There is no need for you to go for a 50-50 Baron smite and give the game to the Unicorns of Love, because with that, with those death timers, there is no way that the Unicorns can be stopped.
Just when it looked like it was going to be a real close one that might go all the way, the Unicorns, they're finding the way to finish the game. One big, crucial mistake from G2 eSports, and the Unicorns just grab everything off the back of this. With Daisy taking the turret, it's only expect a few seconds left on Trick. They get the exhaust, they get the towers, they force the flash from expect, and it will be a hell of a hold if Trick can hold on to this one. Xerxe still tanking through. The last Nexus turret is down. But Mithy and PerkZ are back up, and Unicorns, they've got to retreat from this one. Xerxe a little bit low, and Exileh is going to get shut down. The rest of the Unicorns trying to get out of town. It's Hylissang who's going to make it out with Xerxe, or is he? Hylissang might be giving his life as well, and it is nearly a reverse ace.
But it's too little too late for G2, because what objectives are they going to get off the back of this? They've lost their bottom inhibitor, they've lost their Nexus towers, and sure, you may very well be able to get yourself the Elder Dragon, but it does not make up for what you have lost in this game.
What a critical mistake to give up the 50-50 Baron, the thing that the Unicorns really want you to do every single time. Xerxe makes the hero play, then they stick around. It looked like they just couldn't believe what happened. Maybe they have a chance to fight on, but man.
The thing is, I don't want to take anything away from Xerxe because that was a good steal. He used his brushes really well. He put a ward in them, so actually Unicorns had vision over the Baron, whereas G2 did not. But the fact that G2 went for this play in the first place makes absolutely no sense. So again, props to Xerxe because watch how he manages his brushes to put the Baron pit in the brush, and he has full control, whereas G2 does not. So they're in a much better position to steal it anyway. So great steal from Xerxe, but look at the rest of the team from G2. There's no expect there. PerkZ isn't there. The collapse comes out initially from UOL because Exileh it just completely zoned away and killed off PerkZ. He was able to redeem himself for game 1. And there was no way in which UOL lost that play. And I do not understand why G2 went for the 50-50. It would make more sense if they went for the fight, just use it as a bait to then turn around and get a collapse. That would have made more sense even if they lost. But the fact that they would commit for a 50, I don't know. That's not what I would expect from G2.
Yeah, I mean, we keep talking about how game 1 and game 2 are very different from each other.
They're very different from each other.
This looks like two completely different teams from what we saw in game 1. G2 just making big mistakes. Unicorns, they're still in the driver's seat, but they couldn't close it out. So G2, they're gonna try to take some hope from this because they got the Elder Drake off the back of it. They did open the map in mid. If a big fight goes G2's way, there's still a chance for them to march it down and end this one. They removed the Baron buff from almost everybody. But it's about up anyways. That's no problem. Oh, the teleport from Chachi. Oh, are you kidding me? Is he going to be able to get this one? He hops in. There's no Nexus turrets. He's got one shot. He's got two. He's going to have to flash around the side. Expect picks up Exileh. But the Nexus is going low. There's a double kill for Zven. They've managed to finish it. Daisy is going to be the only one left. They defend, but there's a big Gnar. 1 auto, 2 autos, 3. No, he just didn't. Oh, are you kidding? There's one damn hit left.
Zven gets the quadra kill and stops Unicorns from ending the game. Yo, well, what was that? Why would you commit all 5 members to ending? Those are really long death timers, and G2, they might look to end the game.
They're looking to do it right now. You can already see PerkZ moving it up the mid. The rest of the team's there. They've got Trick on defense. There's 30 seconds left on everybody, VODS.
G2 may very well be able to turn this one around. I question what G2 were doing, but then UOL go and make the same sort of a play. Are G2 actually going to do it?
They've just got Nexus turrets left. I mean, there's still 8 seconds on Hylissang. There's still 5 seconds on Samux. They're going to plow through the rest of it. It's 40 minutes into this game. What a wild one it's been. But in the end, it is going to be G2 and 0. Holy moly!
Look at the joy on their faces. I cannot believe that game ended the way it did. G2 did not deserve to win that game.
You know who deserved to win that game? I think the fans did. What the hell? The last 20 minutes was just madness.
I can't believe that. Like the logic in the Unicorns play was okay, right? Because you can understand you have Tahm Kench ult, you have Ryze ultimate, you have the TP. If you all just hit the Nexus, fine. But you're effectively all grouping up in a small circle against the Rumble, the Azir, the Varus. You're just asking this great teamfight composition from G2 to just steamroll over you, and then you're relying on Chachi to end it. But they couldn't do it.
They were one hit away, and that's the crazy thing. Even in Gnar, they just didn't have enough. And I mean, you got to look at their faces on the Unicorns right now. It just kind of says it all. They didn't have to end that way.
They didn't. They really didn't have to end that way. They had an exposed inhibitor in the bottom lane. They could have just set up a 1-4 with Gnar in top lane, the 4 of them in the mid, just gradually keep pushing and pressure. They go for such a risky play, and it ends up backfiring.
When you're a game down, like if this was game 1, I'd be like, okay, all right. Like you tried something really nutty. But they were already a game down to G2. And they let it get out of control. And for a team that we praise their decision to make a big play proactively and reactively, this is not the way we expected this game to go.
And I feel so bad for the Unicorns because they played that game really well. That was such a good demonstration of the Unicorns' strengths in their ability to force fights early on. The way in which Hylissang used that Tahm Kench to punish the mispositioning of G2 was fantastic. And they got a 20-minute Baron. They had a great 1-3-1 composition. And then they started just being a little bit uncoordinated. It's like the communication broke down, and then they gave windows back for G2. But even then, it still should have been their game to win.
Absolutely, and I think we can all be surprised by it, but we'll see if the analysts can make heads or tails out of it. After those 2 games, let's send it over to Shocks and Crew.
Thank you so much, and we want to start by the tail end of that matchup as it looked